Just when it seemed everything was going right for the Seattle Mariners, it's starting to all come crashing down. A 3-7 road trip in the middle of a playoff race? Yeah, that's not ideal. But there's actually some secret little ways that this may have been a good thing for the Mariners. And also, I'm going to bring you just a tiny smidgen of hope and excitement for this team. Obviously, 3-7, not good. One game against the Mets, you won one game against the Reds, and you won one game against the Rays. Otherwise, you played like crap. That's just the fact of the matter. And now the Mariners come home and they take on the Los Angeles Angels. And then, of course, they're going to face the Dodgers, one of the best teams in all of baseball. We've talked already about how the Mariners have one of the hardest schedules in all of baseball remaining in the month of September. And with just, 19 games left this season, time is starting to run out. And the Mariners find themselves on the brink of running themselves out of the playoffs. After losing that final game to Tampa Bay, the Mariners are now only a half game up on the Texas Rangers for the third wildcard spot. If they were to lose tomorrow and the Rangers win, then that would mean that the Mariners would fall out of the wildcard spot and be out of playoff contention. So obviously, it's not really a good time right now to be a Mariners fan. Or is it? Starting today, the Texas Rangers and the Toronto Blue Jays start a big 4-game series against each other. That means that these teams can beat up on each other and could stay stagnant in the standings, or if one team sweeps the other team, obviously, the losing team is going to go way down in the standings. Now, with that being said, of course, the Mariners need to take care of business versus the Los Angeles Angels without Shohei probably, without Mike Trout, etc., etc. The Mariners just need to start winning baseball games again. But with these teams playing each other, ideally, honestly, in my opinion anyway, the Blue Jays would sweep the Rangers, and that would give you a buffer versus the Rangers later on in the season. If the Rangers lose the next 4 games, which is certainly possible because they're also 3-7 in their last 10, just like the Mariners are, that would mean, sure, the Blue Jays would probably run away with that second wild card spot. But again, one of the reasons why it's a good thing the Mariners have been losing is because it puts you in that third wild card spot, which means in the wild card series, you would face the Minnesota Twins instead of having to face, the Blue Jays or the Rays. And then if you were to win that wild card series, you would go on to play the Houston Astros, which the Mariners have handled quite well this season, instead of going on to play the Baltimore Orioles. So if you're in that third wild card spot, honestly, that's a really good spot for the Mariners to be, unless you win the division. Those are the only 2 good options, winning the division or being in the third wild card spot. Of course, you're still just a few games away from winning the whole damn division, but the Astros have one of the easiest schedules left in all of baseball. Mariners have one of the hardest. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I am saying that I'm not going to hold my breath for the Mariners to win the AL West in 2023. But it's the other team's schedules that are actually super important for the Mariners the rest of the way. Let's take a look at the Blue Jays first. Obviously, the Blue Jays just came off of some of the easiest baseball of their lives, facing Colorado, then Oakland, then Kansas City. So yeah, of course the Blue Jays have been good in their last 10. They're 8-2 in their last 10. But now they're going on to face the Texas Rangers. That should be a dogfight. And they also still have 6 games left versus the Tampa Bay Rays, which is, again, one of the better teams in all of baseball. In fact, after the Rangers series, the Toronto Blue Jays face only AL East opponents. And in 2023, the Blue Jays are 12-25 versus the American League East. That would mean that over their last 15 games against all of the American League East, statistically speaking, they would go 5-10. Obviously, that's just based on statistics. Is that probably going to happen? No. I mean, this could change so quickly. But the fact of the matter is, the Blue Jays have a pretty tough schedule, and they're also playing teams around them, including the Rays, who are in front of them in the wild card, and the Rangers, who are hot on their tail. So if all these teams can beat up on each other and knock each other down, while the Mariners really only play the Rangers the rest of the way and the Astros that are teams in front of them, the Mariners control their own destiny. They can go in and beat the Rangers and beat the Astros and send themselves to the playoffs. Next up, we look at a apparently very blurry Rangers schedule. Of course, they have the 4 versus the Toronto Blue Jays, 3 versus Cleveland, 3 versus Boston, and then of course the Mariners, and then the Mariners again later on in the season. Again, Toronto, big series here. I think that the Red Sox could handle the Rangers if they needed to, honestly, with how bad they've been playing. And honestly, even the Guardians probably could as well. The Rangers are 23-19 versus the AL West this year, so they have had their struggles versus the West, and they still have a lot of games versus the West, including 7 against Seattle and 3 against the Angels. And if we really want to talk about winning the division, well, the Astros do have to face the Orioles coming up on the 18th through the 20th. Of course, they also have a series left versus the Mariners. With that being said, they start a series today versus the Oakland Athletics, and they play Kansas City. They play Kansas City again, and then the Diamondbacks again. The Astros have a relatively easy schedule the rest of the way. But what's really important here, and the best hope that I have for the Mariners fans, is that because these teams are playing each other, the Mariners truly do hold their own destiny in their hands. These teams can beat up on each other. Let's say Again, let's say the Blue Jays go out and sweep the Rangers, the Mariners could then go out and play really well versus the Angels and be games ahead of the Rangers at this point, and they have those last 7 games against them, so a lot can change in those 7 games. But if you can get a buffer now versus the Rangers, you're in a much better spot going into that 7-game series than you would be if you guys were neck and neck. And for the Mariners, they are 24-12 versus the American League West this year. That means that the rest of the way, the Mariners could, based on these numbers, go 10-5 versus the AL West the rest of the year. I mean, come on, that would be perfect. That'd be a perfect way to end the season. There are 4 teams vying for 3 playoff spots, and I don't see any reason why the Mariners can't be one of those 3 AL wildcard teams. Again, could they win the division? Yes, they absolutely could. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying it's a much harder road to win the division now than it is to just stay in the playoffs through the wild card. Against the opponents they're going to be facing, the Mariners have a much better record than the teams around them do. That's just fact of the matter. And while yes, it's a much tougher road ahead, you're probably going to be getting Jared Kelenic back today. Prelander Baroa is probably going to go into that bullpen. So the Mariners are getting reinforcements. At the time that you're watching this, they're probably already in the stadium. So while a terrible 3-7 road trip is really what's glaring on the Mariners right now, there's still plenty of reasons to be excited and plenty of reasons to think that the Mariners can be the team in the playoffs that nobody wants to face. And that series is coming up soon. Now, there are a bunch of different avenues the Mariners could be and who they could be playing in the playoffs. Well, I talked about that in this video on the screen now. I want you to check that one out. Appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.